Monday, May 12th, 2025. Happy Monday, everybody. Apologize in advance if you hear any background noise. There's nothing I can do about it, but let's go ahead and dive on into this. Is this possibly the most bullish chart I could show you right now? It's really interesting seeing where we are when it comes to funding and when it comes to the fact that funding has been negative for quite a while now on this relief rally, and I understand why as a trader, as a part-time trader. But let me read this post here from Philip Swift. Bears getting destroyed. Consistent negative funding rates, red bars in a bull market is such a great bottom signal every single time. And so why can I resonate with this? It's because when we were down in this area, down at $74,000, the idea that we would break through heavy doses of resistance. I talked about $95,000. $95,000 logically was a great place to short. We were in a downtrend. We were in, you could call it a bear market, and a mini bear market at least. And so seasoned traders, people who have been doing this for a while, they were looking for opportunities to short on a relief rally, and it just so happened that this time it did not work out because we are still in a bull run. I mean, that's just reality right now. There are lots and lots of metrics to have pointed to this idea that 109 on Inauguration Day was the peak, and it still might have been the peak, honestly, but it is looking very unlikely that 109 was the peak for 2025. So anyway, given the fact that there was so much negative funding, and look at it in comparison to previous times during this cycle. So in August of 2025, lots of red days, lots of people trying to take advantage. August, September of a shorting opportunity, and the shorts got wrecked. Same deal this time around. Shorts got absolutely destroyed. They got destroyed. And there was a time when I was shorting. Now I hedged my bets for sure, but there was a time that I was shorting, mostly shorting, and those days I can tell you are long gone. I learned my lesson maybe a week or two ago, but actually more like 3 weeks ago, but some people have harder heads than I do, I suppose. So this is very bullish, guys, but let's move on. My goodness. Oh my goodness. I mean, all right, a lot of this does have to do with the spot Bitcoin ETFs, but the level of accumulation that we're seeing with Bitcoin right now is just off the charts insane. And this is short-term holder whale balances. All right, so if you understand this, whales, so big pockets, that's why I'm talking about like the ETFs, right? Short-term whale holder balances. Let's read this from Axel Adler. Again, another awesome chart from him. Since the beginning of 2022, large holders have been increasing their positions. In January 2022, their balance was 60,000 Bitcoin, only 60,000 Bitcoin. In 2024, it had already reached 103,000 Bitcoin. And by May of 2025, a little over a year later, we're looking at a balance of 1.338 million Bitcoin. Now, if you're wondering how much Bitcoin, the spot Bitcoin ETFs have, it's not 1.338 million. It's less than half of that. So that doesn't account for everything. But this rapid rate of increase for short-term holders for Bitcoin, I mean, at some point, we are breaking to the upside. At some point, diminishing returns are no longer a thing. I don't know when. That's the big thing that I keep pointing out. I don't know when. Hopefully soon. But man, it's a runaway freight train right now, and there's very little signs that this is going to stop anytime soon. Let's finish reading this. The trend remains clearly bullish during price correction periods. Quote unquote, whales consistently purchase Bitcoin, removing coins from free circulation, which reduces the volume of liquid supply and serves as an additional fundamental driver for further Bitcoin growth. This video is largely Bitcoin, very, very heavily Bitcoin. A few things, just lots of alpha that came out in my browsing here. So Philip Swift, positive crypto. Update, Bitcoin has sailed through 100K and MVRV score is now at 2.5. Still a long way to go. All right. I started paying attention to MVRV score in 2021. And if you look, pretend that it's 2021 and we are right about where my mouse is. We haven't seen MVRV score late 2020, haven't seen MVRV score shoot up all that much. Where would you have expected the MVRV score to go entering into 2021? Well, if you look at this, I mean, we barely got into this pink zone with MVRV score. What's MVRV score, by the way? It's market cap divided by realized cap. It essentially shows how much the average Bitcoin holder is in profit. And so a score of 7 means that they're in profit 7x. So previous cycles, 2017, we got up to a score of 10. 2013, it happened 2 times. We got up to a score of 10. A little under 10 the second time when Bitcoin got to $1,300. And so in early 2021 or late 2020, everyone was expecting the MVRV score to get up to a score of 10 again. And that would have been a blow off top, something like $100,000 Bitcoin in the first half of 2021, or more like $200,000 Bitcoin in the second half of 2021. It didn't get there because we had a rounded top. I wonder, I don't think that this time around we would get up to a score of 7. It's kind of wild to me to think that the average Bitcoin holder would get up to a 7x. Not in this environment, not with the heavy doses of money that's put in. Maybe I'm wrong, but you can see in early 2024, we got up to a score of like 3. And then in late 2024, we got up to a score of, a little bit higher than 3. So I'd be a lot more cautious, especially given the fact that it's May and things typically cool off during the summer or just get really choppy and boring. I wouldn't be surprised if once again we got up to a score of 3, 3.5, something like that for Bitcoin's MVRV score. I'm not saying that that's going to be the peak for this cycle between now and 2028, but I would say short term, that would be a more realistic place to go. And then we'll see about later on, either whether we do have this big November 2025 peak or into 2026 or 2027. Here we go again. M2, an M2 update. Bitcoin map to global M2 is an unreasonably effective leading indicator. Guys, be careful, be mindful of the warnings that I've given about this because I'm seeing lots and lots of signs on the internet. Look at this comment, for example. See you at 150K. All right, that's who you're up against. Okay, I would love it. I'd be ecstatic if Bitcoin got up to $150,000. That would be great. But what a lot of people are going to do, they're going to be paying attention to this and being like, no doubt, we're going to get to $150,000 in July, August, September, something like that. And so I might as well hold on for dear life. But what I fear is going to happen is I've given lots of metrics showing that I would estimate that Bitcoin is going to get up to about 115 to 120. And then we'll see, hopefully, where I think we're in the early stages at least of a move in altcoins where you can make some gains in altcoins. And a lot of people watching this M2 money supply chart, they're just going to hold and they're not going to sell. And I'm telling you guys, around the time that Bitcoin gets to 115, 120, something like that, if it even gets there, I'm going to be pretty interested in taking some profits. And I think that that's going to be the better play right now. I don't think that this is the time, for absolute pandemonium for crypto. But who knows, I have a decent amount of confidence in that. Not yet. Eventually, but not yet. Another interesting thing here, so Bitcoin is among the top 5 biggest global assets with a $2 trillion market cap, bigger than Amazon and Google Alphabet. So what do we have in front of us? We have NVIDIA, Apple, and Microsoft. Interesting that Microsoft is bigger than Apple. I don't think most people would have thought that. And then, hey, there's the behemoth in the room, gold at 22.42 trillion. Will we? One day will Bitcoin overtake gold? It's going to be a long battle. I'm going to tell you that because we are entering, in my opinion, a 10 to 15 year stretch where gold's market cap could get to, could get to 50 trillion, maybe even, dare I say, $100 trillion. So I do believe that Bitcoin will one day be $100 trillion, but we're going to be catching up to another runaway freight train, in my opinion. So interesting stuff. I think it's a no-brainer that Bitcoin would cross NVIDIA, Apple, and Microsoft. But moving on, reserve risk, another bullish signal, just something to pay attention to. Here we go. Long-term holders are starting to move old coins again. That sounds scary, I'm sure, but you got to understand that what happens in euphoria is not euphoria. What happens in peaks, during peaks, is that this always happens, is that we see long-term holders starting to unwind a little bit. And then what generally happens at a peak is that long-term holders, they kind of climax with their selling. And so it's not a bad thing. I know that seems kind of the opposite of what should happen, but that's what happens. Short-term holders do a lot of buying. They buy from long-term holders. There's only a set amount of supply of Bitcoin that's increasing a very small amount every day, to the tune of 450 Bitcoin a day. So what happens as we see the price rise, the pressure on the long-term holders, because there's so much in profit, it's too much, and some of them sell, and others diamond hand, and then that selling gets to a point where even everything peaks. The long-term holders, the short-term holders will take profits. Everyone's taking profits, and then that's the peak. So you can see in 2017, 2021, you see significant increases in long-term holder selling, and here we are today, and we're in an okay spot, but it is picking up, which I would say is a good sign. So next chart, you can see same deal. These orange periods here feature heavy doses of long-term holder selling, and we are climbing back up. Maybe we would see another peak, and maybe my estimate's a little too low. We would see another peak of long-term holder selling, another orange zone here where long-term holders sell very aggressively, and it's a big spike in long-term holder selling. If you see long-term holder selling topping out and spiking really hard, we probably are pretty close to a peak for Bitcoin. So there's another chart here. Coin days destroyed, same deal. Not a metric that I pay a ton of attention to. You can see it's not, aside from, maybe one big whale old long-term holder sells a ton like what we saw in June of 2024, sure, but otherwise, I think that was Germany. Was that Germany? No, that wasn't Germany. Never mind. Otherwise, I don't really pay much attention to coin days destroyed. But moving on, the 2017 fractal. This is not happening, guys. I'm sorry. We're not getting to $1.2 million for Bitcoin at the end of this year. But it's nice to imagine. It's nice to dream, right? And here we are. I mean, a lot of people have been comparing this cycle to 2017. And to be clear, it has mirrored 2017 to this point a lot more for Bitcoin at least than 2013 or 2021. And so could we dream? Could we have a little bit of hopium injected into our veins? Sure, let's do it. Let's dream together. $1.2 million Bitcoin at the end of 2025. To be clear, I mean, the original poster, there is a reply here. Let me see that. You really think this goes as far as 2026? Nope, this fractal chart actually ends December 2025. Oh, never mind. I thought he was saying, do you really think this goes as high? Maybe I don't know. I'm not going to say that this person believes this. So yeah, for research purposes only, no hype, only hopium, and no hopium. Excuse me. So no, nobody's. This person's not saying 1.2 million. If that happens, guys, I'm probably going to retire and have fun, everybody. But anyway, moving on. I don't even know if this is, what's up with MSTY? I don't know if any of you have bought into this. It is a MicroStrategy yield-bearing ETF, massive dividends. And if you can see here, $10 gets you, at the most recent dividend, $10 would get you $11.80 a year in dividends. $1 million worth of MSTY would get you $1.1 million a year in dividends. I don't think it's sustainable, but I do own some. And if Bitcoin's going to climb, if Bitcoin's going to be looking good for the remainder of the year, we'll see. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case, but this should be a good yield-bearing thing. Now, you don't want to be holding this in the bear market. I'm telling you with a great deal of certainty, do not hold this in the bear market. But for the time being, sure, this looks just fine to be holding. Anyway, that is all I have for today. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful rest of your week, and I will most certainly be seeing you in another video. Peace.